oftentimes we get questions from our clients like, hey, in Louisiana or in New Orleans, what type of insurance is absolutely required to be able to be on the road legally? And the short answer is the only thing that is absolutely required to be on the road and driving is minimal liability insurance. Louisiana has a law that says that you must have liability insurance in order to drive a vehicle in this state. And that liability insurance, quite frankly, is pretty low. The limits have been set for some time now, and in my opinion, need to be increased given the ever-rising cost of health care as well as the cost to repair cars. But there's two components. There's one that covers bodily injury or if you've hurt somebody physically, and the other is for property damage, the repairs to the car. In Louisiana, the minimum bodily injury liability limits are $15,000 per person with a maximum of $30,000 in the aggregate. What does that mean? That means that there's $30,000 of insurance minimum available for injury claims with no more than $15,000 going to any one individual. So certainly if you get in a crash and you're responsible and there's two people involved on the other side, and you have a state minimum limits policy, well, then there's $15,000 available to both because, do the math. You have $30,000 of insurance, two people involved. They could each potentially recover the minimum amount under your policy, or rather the maximum in that circumstance. But it gets a little trickier when you have multiple people. So if you're in a crash with a minimum limits policy and there's 4 or 5 people on the other side, you can quickly see how that $30,000 limit of the policy and a 15 cap on per person can get stressed pretty quickly. When it comes to the property damage side, Louisiana law provides that the minimum insurance that you have to have is $25,000 per incident. Now that's per crash. So if you get in a crash and you hit 2 or 3 cars, you can quickly see how $25,000 may not be enough to cover the damage that was caused as a result of the crash. You always tell people you have to insure yourself to where you are in life. If you're just starting out and you really don't have anything, then maybe a minimal limits policy is right for you. But if you're further along in life and you're a homeowner, you have vacation property, you're a high income individual, you should absolutely not have a minimum limits policy. You need to visit with your insurance agent, have the honest conversation, and pick a higher level of limits that are applicable to you. Beyond liability insurance in Louisiana, there are other things that you could potentially have. One, there is uninsured, underinsured motorist, which attaches to every Louisiana policy unless you opt out of it. What does that do? That protects you from the guy or gal who runs into you either who A, had no insurance at all, or B, didn't have enough insurance. So they may have had insurance on their car, but your injuries may be such that they exceed the amount of insurance that other driver had. Then you can turn to your own policy under your underinsured motorist and receive compensation for those injuries for things potentially like medical bills, pain and suffering, etc. Now, there are a couple of different types of uninsured motorists. There's what we call kind of full-blown standard uninsured motorists, where there's no limitations on what you can recover other than your policy limits. And then there's what's called economic-only uninsured motorists. That's something that's an option that you can choose as an insured to potentially lower your premium some. In my opinion, the amount that you save is not worth what you're giving up. And if you have economic only, the only thing it will cover are things like economic damages, medical bills, lost wages, but the pain and suffering is out the window. You cannot recover pain and suffering under an economic only uninsured motorist policy, and oftentimes that's the biggest component of the claim. Above and beyond that, there are things that you can purchase as an individual to help protect yourself. Medical payments. Medical payments is a fairly cheap line of insurance that does just what it sounds like. It helps cover medical bills as a result of a crash, regardless who's at fault. So if you're driving down the road and you run off the road and hit a tree and you hurt yourself, medical payments would be there to help. Likewise, if you're in an accident and somebody else is at fault, medical payments is there to help cover medical bills for not only you, but your passengers. And that's typically sold in levels of like $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 and up in coverage. And again, in my experience, it's very cheap coverage and something that I recommend that everybody have. Now, when it comes to your car, there are things like comprehensive and collision coverage. Collision coverage covers anything damage resulting from a collision. So your car running into something, whether it was your fault or somebody else's fault. If somebody runs into you and didn't have insurance and you had collision coverage, your collision coverage would kick in to repair your car, subject to whatever your deductible is. Now, comprehensive is anything other than a collision. So think like a flood, think like a lightning strike, think vandalism, things of those nature. Think your car is sitting outside and a tornado picks it up and sends it 2 blocks away. Comprehensive would kick in that case and repair the damage to your car, subject to your deductible. So those are some of the coverages. The only one that is absolutely required is liability insurance to drive, but the other lines of coverage are something to think about. Again, your budget considered and where you are in life as to what type of coverages you should and shouldn't have at what levels. One thing I'd like to add about minimal limits liability coverage. The concern is if you're a person that has assets, again, you own a home, you have a vacation home, maybe you have rental property, maybe you just have money in the bank that you've inherited or something like that. If you are involved in a crash and it is your fault and your insurance is out of line with where you are in life, if you should be somebody who has a minimal limits policy and you have assets, you are exposing yourself to what's called excess liability. So that representative on the other side is going to do their due diligence on you and find out about these things and say, you know what, your insurance company has offered that $15,000 or whatever it may be that you have insured at low limits, but we understand that you have things and we're not going to stop there. We're going to go beyond that. We're going to come after your house. We're going to come after the money that you have in the bank. Those rental properties, we're going to take that too. I can tell you as an attorney, I have on occasion done that, where I've sought recovery beyond the other person's insurance limits because during our due diligence we found out that the other individual had assets and for whatever reason they were woefully underinsured. Maybe have had a minimal limits policy, but they owned outright a $750,000 house. Why somebody in that position would ever have a minimal limits policy? Yes, it makes you right with the law. Yes, you can drive on the street, but should something happen and you're at fault, you've now exposed all of that, all the equity in your home and your life savings and everything else to attack by an attorney like myself who may say, you know what, my client is grievously injured, well beyond the amount of your insurance. We'll take your insurance eventually, but we're going to come after the rest of it too. If you have any questions about your insurance coverage, I'm happy to review your policy free of charge to give you my advice and my take on things. And certainly if you find yourself the victim of an accident in New Orleans or in the New Orleans area, we're here to help. Just shoot us a call, send us a text, write us an email, and we'll do everything that we can to help.